We're
Uh,
going
we're go- thank you, MJ, for making it go live. We're going to discuss today HB 716, followed by HB 767, then HB 967, HB 10076, HB 1152, HB 1239, and HB 1167. We have a full agenda, ladies and gentlemen. So let us begin and let's make sure we are all paying attention to what's happening so we can move right along. We will start with HB 716. Ben, if you could give us the description of that, I certainly would appreciate it. You have the floor, Ben.
Thank you, Chair Holmes. Okay, let me, there's a reprint went out to everyone, and I'll pull that up right now. And I sent a request to share my screen.
You should be all set, Ben.
Okay, let's see here. All right, the title of the bill is Housing and Community Development Statewide Rental Assistance Voucher Program Eligibility. There's no state or local fiscal impact. There are amendments based on the testimony received. Just some background. This is a departmental bill that makes changes to DHCD's administration of the statewide rental assistance voucher program.
Hang on a second, Ben. Could you make it a little bit wider, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't forget we have Delegate Ciliberti online here.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Okay. So, yep, that's a state program. It was characterized at the bill hearing as a technical bill designed to change regulations for this state program, intended to help with operations and make it more implementable. And some more background, the Housing Choice Voucher Program is lets local and state and local governments administer several federal programs that provide rental subsidies for low-income tenants. And then the largest program within this is the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which is primarily administered at the local level. At the state level, DHCD administers the program for jurisdictions that do not receive a direct allocation from HUD. So I can go through the bill here. Like I mentioned, is sort of somewhat a technical bill, so it might be bouncing around a bit. But here we are in the code. There's a statewide rental assistance voucher program. They're providing the first part here that the department may project base up to 100% of its voucher units if necessary to administer the state program, including those that don't have a local administrator. The next part, this brings us to the first amendment in the bill that was requested. You can see this is another separate provision where it concerns a family assisted under the state program shall be expected to pay not more than, it was in the bill, it was 40%, but now it's changed back to 30%. This aligns it with the federal voucher program that's also 30%. And just to be clear, the 30% is of their income as opposed to 40% of their income for rent and utilities. So this is in that way, again, federally consistent and more, I guess, tenant friendly. The second part of the amendment here is so as it continues to read, of their adjusted gross income for rent and utilities. At the time the family initially receives assistance, and then it goes on to say, except as otherwise provided in the voucher program. That's the reason that language is there is because it's sometimes the case that there are unique distinctions based on like unique circumstances and fair market rent that may alter that percentage. So that's based on that. I was a little concerned about it being too interconnected or dependent on federal guidelines there, but the entire voucher program is, I guess, underpinned by that. So just something to keep in mind. Here's another section about the housing agency conducting an initial inspection and periodic inspections. Okay, and then this next part here of the bill this is from the Housing Authority of Baltimore City. Their testimony, there were concerns about funding for housing authorities generally. So you can see the initial language and then the amended language. What it's doing here is, of the amount specified, which refers to the funding, the department shall distribute either, it's going to be 6% each year to each public housing agency, which was the original bill, or the original bill, or they can distribute an amount equal to the federal de minimis rate of the public housing agency, modified based on the federal regulations, whichever is greater. And that's because of concerns about federal funding and it changes at the federal level. So that was the basis for that. And I checked with DHCD, they were good with the amendments that the subcommittees reviewed, and that's the voucher homes.
And there was no unfavorable testimony on this bill, ladies and gentlemen. Delegate Long, you have the floor.
Yes, and if I'm in order, I believe we have to make a motion for the amendments first, and then for discussion.
That is correct.
I also make the motion for the amendments.
And there is a second by someone?
Second.
Very good. There's a motion and a second on the amendments. We're up for discussion. Delegate Noraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a technical question. It's probably for Ben. I'm on page 3, Ben, and I don't know if I don't know if I have a reprint that I'm looking at here, but it's page 3. I'm on line 29, the section that talks about for fiscal year 2028, that right down at the bottom of the page there. I'm just curious, is there a reason that we would not want to give the governor flexibility in that number? Like, hopefully the number goes down of people that need vouchers. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just stays the same or goes up. But we don't know what that number might be. Why would we want to say that it has to be that number? And if it is that number, does the governor still have flexibility to move that money around? Like if the number of people on vouchers were less, could the governor still move that money around to somewhere else in the budget? I guess is my question there.
Well, if
I don't know.
as you can see, it's he's already putting the funds in for each year, and you're trying to figure out if for 2028 you should allow him some flexibility or keep it the way it is.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's what I'm getting at. I'm just like,
Yeah.
theoretically, I mean, it may very well go up, the number of people that need vouchers, but it could also go down. And if that is the case, does the governor have flexibility there to move that money if that number of vouchers goes down? And I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Chair, but I just kind of wanted some clarification on that.
Yeah, and I would hesitate to make those decisions here in a non-budget committee.
Sure.
That certainly is an appropriations type of decision. Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my understanding from back during the Hogan administration is we had all sorts of mandated appropriation bills that he was free to ignore. But I'm not having served on appropriations. I don't exactly know what the strictures are. What I can tell you, because this was originally my bill, is that 10 million number did not come from an estimate of how many people are on vouchers now. It came from a negotiation with the Senate of the maximum amount of money that we could get in that specific budget year, and it's nowhere close to the demand for vouchers. Okay. Like sadly, it's like a comically low amount of money. Like that's why we have all this stuff in here about prioritizing certain groups, is because this is like maybe less than 1% of the population who would want these vouchers, who are on federal waiting list. I mean, the wait list, depending on what county you're in, can be 10 to 20 years.
That's right.
So the 10 million number, I think we initially wanted like 20, and then there was a 15 compromise for a while, and then we ended up at 10. But we definitely don't have to worry about, sadly, this would be a good problem to have, but we don't have to worry about the number of voucher holders going down and suddenly us spending too much money on it, because this is like a very, very small Band-Aid at a very large problem.
Okay. Delegate, thank you. That's helpful. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'd hate to make appropriation decisions here in ENT, even though we are very wise here at ENT. We have a motion and a second on the amendments. Delegate Healy. You're muted.
I just wanted to add briefly that is existing language. So it's
That's
this
correct.
is
That's
not
correct.
the language of the bill. It's just the context.
Right, exactly. Any additional questions on the amendments?
No, no.
Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition, abstentions, none. Move the bill as amended.
Second.
And there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on HB 716 as amended? Seeing none, all in favor of HB 716 as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? This bill will receive a favorable report unanimously from all members here in the HRP, Housing Real Property. Delegate Silverberty, yes, sir.
Yeah, I know the bill is gone, but I had a quick question. On page 3, line 20, building with 3, no, I'm sorry. Page 3, line 23, unit located in a building with 20 units or more. Do they have to be occupied?
That have to be occupied. Now, these are to obtain the vouchers. So
They have to be.
yeah. So I answer your question is no, they don't have to be. If women can expand, they don't have to be occupied. These are persons looking to get the vouchers.
So they do not have to be occupied.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Let us now go to HB 767. And let us move to that bill, Ben 767, and give us a brief description on that one.
Thank you, Chair Holmes. I'm pulling up the amendment. Okay, the subcommittee should have received the amendment for this as well. One second. And I also sent out a spreadsheet too, with some info about some other jurisdictions. But the subcommittee, Chair Holmes, as you know, was able to discuss this bill last week. Since then, there were you requested some generally technical amendments, and I can go through those right now if that works for you. Or...
That does, yes, indeed.
Okay.
And these this discussion that Ben is going through now is based upon the discussion we had last week. Go ahead, Ben.
Okay. Great. So and I'll just go through them quickly here. Okay. The first part is adding. We have the notice here in B that we discussed regarding the as it says in B1 there. After a court has issued a warrant of restitution, the landlord shall, at least 14 days before the scheduled date of repossession, provide written notice to the tenant of the date on which the warrant of restitution is scheduled to be executed. That's being done by the two existing methods are sending notice by first-class mail, a certificate of mailing, which is important, as discussed previously, to verify that that's occurred, posting the notice on the front door of the lease premises and taking a date stamp photo. That was, I think that's used in Baltimore City now. It's a different sort of method of communicating with people. So that was sort of the basis, is my understanding, for why it's important. And then there's this added Roman 3 there. If the landlord knows or has on file the email address or cell phone number of the tenant, sending the notice electronically to the tenant by an email or text message. The notice requirements are, for 3 they're already complying with 1 and 2. So if they have a text, they have their cell phone or an email, being able to provide that shouldn't necessarily be particularly more burdensome. And just another way to help ensure that the tenant is notified. There were some technical changes here from the judiciary's testimony that was submitted. They felt that it'd be better to just be more broad and say case number there. Some similar changes regarding like district court or just court, or maybe summary ejectment are used. So that is just something to keep in. You might see that. Yeah, there's another example. Just that's just a technical correction. Moving forward. This is the next part of the amendments, Chair Holmes. The subsection C here is where if the landlord presents the documentation listed in subsection B1, the sheriff is then going to be filing that document with the clerk of the court. And where you added, Chair Holmes, 14806 of this article, executing the warrant of restitution. And 14806 is an existing provision of code which concerns pet protections during evictions. So it basically, the sheriff, when an eviction is carried out, they are going to still, as is current law, inspect the premises for a pet, which is going to be a dog or a cat, and make sure that there aren't any dogs or cats in there, and then execute the warrant of restitution. So just kind of like a clarifying change. And then it had a corresponding change in F5 here, which was about, right now it says that a landlord, after the eviction's carried out, is not prohibited from disposing the property or transferring animal that has not already been removed during that restoration of possession to the landlord. They can return the animal, any animal which would be beyond a dog or cat, to shelter, rescue organization. So yeah, those are the amendments, Chair Holmes. Yeah, there was the like spreadsheet, which again was just provided to give a little more background about, you know, what's to help visualize what's going on in other jurisdictions, and as opposed to just maybe it seeming like didn't provide more basis for the notice before the eviction and the reclamation period. So currently the bill is 14 days notice before the eviction, and then a 10-day reclamation period.
And the spreadsheet was very, very helpful that all of us received. I appreciate that, Ben. It did outline a lot of different things here. Is there a motion on the, I move the amendments, please.
Second, Mr.
There's a
Chair.
motion and a second on the amendments. Let's take questions. Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Always appreciate it. I'm just looking at the spreadsheet, so I apologize because I just got my hands on it as well. This is the one that's providing clarity sort of what some other states are doing with respect to this reclamation, just so everyone's on the same page. Not sure if everyone has seen it yet. But as I'm counting, it looks like there's roughly about 10 states or so on here, and it looks like about half of them, about 5, do allow for some charge of holding possessions. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think that's very reasonable, given that, you know, many other states are allowing for some sort of charge of storage. I just want to throw that out to the subcommittee.
Thank you, Delegate Naraki. I appreciate that. Delegate Addison.
Thank you, Chair. Last week I asked the question as to who is going to pay for this storage, and no one could tell me who would pay for the storage.
Well, if there's, Ben, go ahead and pull that up.
Yeah, can you help me out with this one, please?
Well, that's in the language. Can you pull that up, Ben?
Yep. 1 second. Oh, okay. Thank you. So to be clear, the landlord is paying the cost of the
Correct.
of the storage. I'm going to look for the exact provision here, but it's my, yeah.
And see if you can pin that down for us there, Ben, so Delegate Addison can.
Okay, 1 second.
Okay. Yep. Type that magic word in there. And for the committee's understanding, Delegate Stewart is going to be taking this one to the floor. And
Mr. Chair, I thought you were going to let me take this one to the floor.
We can tag team it if you want, Delegate Naraki.
uh, and because I'm tired, Delegate Naraki, any other jokes you want to propose to the subcommittee? Is that it?
That's it, Mr. Chair.
There you go, right there, Delegate Addison. E2. Is that it? Yep, E2.
Can I move the bill, Mr. Chair?
There's a motion to move the bill
Second.
as amended. There's a second.
Second.
Any questions on HB 767 as amended?
Did we vote on the amendments?
Did we? Oh,
We
I
did.
thought we did. I thought we did.
Oh, okay, I may have missed that. Okay, sorry.
We did.
Okay, I thought we did as well. So on the floor now is the bill as amended. There's a motion and a second. Any questions on the bill as amended? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, let me get those hands. That would be
I'm going with because I still don't understand. I wouldn't want to pay to store someone's things that could not pay their rent. So yeah,
I
still don't
totally
understand.
I totally understand, Delegate Addison.
Okay.
Yeah, so Naraki, Addison, Barry, where are you?
Right here.
Your opposition?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. And anyone else in opposition?
Looks like
Delegate
Delegate
Baker.
Baker.
I'm sorry?
Looks like
Delegate
Delegate Baker.
Baker.
Baker, I keep
Baker.
waving at you, Marvin.
I'm so
That's
sorry,
it.
man.
I'm not waving at you. That's a no vote.
I'm for the bill, but opposed to the floor leader.
Second.
Delegate Allen, I can be the compromise there then.
Hey, I'll take it if called upon.
The floor leader vote is not on the floor. All right, so we have a majority of members are in favor of HB 767, not a majority, but a majority. So therefore, HB 767 does get a favorable vote from the subcommittee. We will now go
Hey,
to
Marvin,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, what was the
Yes.
vote on that?
that is
5-4.
Hey, Marvin.
5-4. Thank you.
Marvin,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
how was that a majority vote?
5 in favor.
Oh, okay, I see Miss Healy. I didn't see Miss Healy.
Okay.
Sorry.
We
Thank you.
have 9 and 5 did it.
Mr. Chair, that wasn't a landslide?
Close enough for me.
Okay, I was just checking, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
If you
And,
win by-
and just in case we have any more mathematical questions, I do have my differential equations book right here in the library. So just let me know, okay? All righty. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will now go to HB 964. It's a Montgomery County bill. Ben, can you give us a description on that if you don't mind?
Thank you, Chair Holmes. I got it up now. Okay.
Spread out a little bit, please, there,
Oh,
Ben.
yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
So the, excuse me, the bill is titled the Montgomery County Task Force on the Displacement of Residents of Emery Grove. There's no state or local fiscal impact. The note goes on to state that it can be implemented by the Montgomery County Human Rights Office with existing resources. There's no amendments. The testimony was all favorable. The delegation vote was 23-0. Some quick background. Emery Grove was founded shortly after the Civil War when, as Delegate Crutchfield's testimony notes, several freedmen from local farms purchased property, which was considered rocky and unusable for farming. It was a self-contained community that was anchored by the Emery Grove United Methodist Church. It was a thriving community, but there was the passage of the Housing Act of 1949 that was intended to address urban and suburban areas of blight. And this unfortunately had the consequence of disproportionately targeting African American communities and displacing and harming African American families. So this bill establishes a task force to study the urban and renewal programs that were carried out that caused the displacement of residents of Emery Grove. And let's see here. So there's the makeup of the task force. A lot of Montgomery County entities. They have the pastor of the Emery Grove United Methodist Church. Human Rights Office is the chair, and also provides staff, as you saw and as we discussed. And then here they're analyzing the displacement, the effects that's had, and then they're doing that. And then if deemed appropriate by the task force, recommending remedies for past inequities in the purchase of land by Montgomery County through that urban renewal program from 1960 to 1985. And benefits for former landowners and incentives for construction projects. So the final report is due 2026 of December.
Doug at Long, you have the floor.
Yes, I was gonna make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on HB 964? Seeing none, all in favor of HB 964 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? I don't see any hands and I don't see any waving. Therefore, I'll assume that HB 964 is favorable and unanimous amongst those present. We will now go to HB 1076. Ben, if you could go through HB 1076, I would appreciate that, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. I am zooming in here. HB 1076. 1 second. Okay, the title is Residential Real Property, Landlord and Tenant, Notice of Landlord Entry. There's no fiscal impact. There were amendments based on the testimony received that we worked on, Chair Holmes. Generally, here the bill, like as it kind of states there, is about the I think in the testimony, there were concerns about landlords entering people's tenants' property, particularly without notice or without any basis for doing so. So the bill is requiring a landlord they can only enter a leased premises for the purpose of completing repairs, inspecting the leased premises, showing the leased premises to prospective or actual purchasers, ensuring the protection and safety of the property and occupants, completing work ordered by a governmental entity, and then last is if responding to any other written request of the tenant, which is just like a general, more flexibility provision. So yeah, it provides some details about the notice. I guess the first part, the next part of the bill and another amendment, as you can see in B1, before entering the premises, the landlord has to provide written notice to the tenant of their intent to enter, and they can only enter between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. This was based on concerns by the realtor's office about having a window that is maybe the existing window 9 to 5 was too restrictive. So this broadens that to address that concern. Then it goes on, you can see a landlord shall provide written notice to the tenant at least 24 hours in advance. That testimony was based on also from the realtors. I think another advocacy group as well asked for that, but they were saying almost all written leases contain a provision requiring 24-hour notice. And so that's kind of just to bring it in form with what's stated in leases.
And it's also consistent with a lot of jurisdictions too.
Great. Okay, and then let's see, it says what the notice is going to include. I thought another important part of the bill was that the tenant may agree in writing to allow a landlord to enter the leased premises less than 24 hours from receipt of the notice. So I think most people have probably generally agreeable relationships with their landlords. So this kind of contemplates that while still protecting people. It allows the tenant to seek an injunction, and the court may issue an injunction and assess appropriate damages against the landlord for the breach of the tenant's covenant to quiet enjoyment of the leased premises. So, yep, with that, yeah, that's pretty much it, terms.
I make a motion to move the amendments. Is there a second on the amendments?
Second.
All right, the amendments have been moved and seconded. Any discussion on these amendments? Delegate Naraki.
Mr. Chair, do these amendments, I guess, where do these leave us now with, like the realtors and some other groups, or maybe it was just the realtors that expressed opposition? I haven't gone back and looked at the committee testimony yet.
Yeah, a couple of the amendments that we have adopted were specific to the concerns of the realtors. Ben, if you could expand upon that, I would appreciate it.
Okay, Chair Holmes. Yeah, I'll try to just real quick. So yeah, MMHA was also concerned about a 48-hour notice being too far in advance. So that was that. Then the realtors, again, they wanted a 24 hours instead of 48. They also had that window. That was, I think some of the concerns were maybe more generalized or, maybe, but those were kind of those is my understanding of the substantive specific issues with the bill. I think maybe some of them were opposed to the requiring notice in general, but there was a lot of favorable testimony. Let's see, there was a couple excerpts here. The Pro Bono Research Center, they noted representing a woman who was part of a small faith community, and the religious leader was the landlord, who would frequently demand access to their room and did not even have a locking door, violating their right to privacy. The Maryland Women's Caucus was saying many women in Maryland don't feel secure in their homes, and particularly single mothers or survivors of domestic violence often face unique challenges with secure housing. So
I guess, Mr. Chair, if I may, does
Go
that
ahead.
mean that some of those groups are supportive? I certainly appreciate all of them. I just don't know where the groups sit now. Like, are the realtors now in support of the legislation, or MMHA? That's really the question I'm getting at. Like, does this get them to a point where they're at least somewhat comfortable with the bill?
Well, typically, once they suggest amendments, and whether we take them or not, it's very unusual that they would send a second letter to identify that now that you have adopted my suggested amendments, I now have a second letter. So it's very rare that you have a second letter, but we can make our own kind of a analysis that this is what they asked for and this is what we gave them. We have to make an assumption, obviously, without having something concrete in writing. But like I said, this is what they asked for, and this is what we presented to them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Baker, you have the floor.
Yes, I can't open my screen up to look at the testimony, but the realtors, did they state that they were favorable with amendments, or were they just totally unfavorable?
I don't have that in front of me, Ben. What was their original testimony? Was that totally unfavorable or was it favorable with amendment, Ben? I don't have it in front of me right now.
1 second.
And then was their amendment accepted?
Their amendments were accepted, yes. Those were the amendments that Ben just read
that's
to
helpful.
us. Yeah, those were the amendments that we just adopted.
Okay.
I mean,
I
that we are
just want to make
discussing
sure they
now.
were favorable with amendments.
Well,
If we
yeah,
can.
Chair Holmes.
Yeah, go ahead,
Thank
Dan.
you.
Okay, the position I'm seeing in the floor system here for the realtors is their position is unfavorable. They said that all leases contain 24 hours notice. That's, I think, their first paragraph summary. Well, and then the second paragraph is landlords have good communication on these issues. There are times when a tenant may not want a landlord on the property and it may be difficult to schedule a visit. The default notice in the bill should embrace best practices in the industry. So I think that's my understanding is they're reiterating 24 hours.
24 hours, correct.
And then their last paragraph is believe the window for repairing problems under the bill is not long enough. So the amendment also, yeah.
And the amendment that we propose also addresses that as well. So all of their concerns have been addressed. All right. Any additional,
Does that mean
I'm sorry, Baker. Delegate Baker, you cut off. Oh, I'm sorry. So that addresses the, so that we are in the amendment stage. We have a motion and a second on the amendments. Any additional discussion on the amendments? Seeing no additional discussions on the amendments, all in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition to the amendments? On the bill as amended, do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
There's a motion. I heard a second.
Yep.
Any discussion on HB 1076 as amended? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of HB 1076 as amended signify by saying aye.
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 And all those in opposition, please let me know.
I'm opposed, Mr. Chair.
That's okay, Naraki. And I'm looking for other hands.
Baker.
I see Baker. I see Baker. Shiliberti is silent. Therefore, we have Baker and Naraki. And that means we have
7-2.
7-2. That is correct. All righty. Well, I'm Delegate Healy.
Yeah, I just have one question. There's a Senate crossfile on this. Well, is this in line with what they did in the Senate or are doing in the Senate?
Good question.
Ben, I'm also looking right now as well. I didn't have a chance to do that
Yeah.
this morning.
Did if I may, Chair Holmes,
Go ahead.
did Delegate Healy, is there
Senate Bill 677.
yeah, was there did you see anything indicating that? I'm not aware of it.
I just saw that there's a Senate crossfile and I wasn't sure where that was in the process.
And I did not have a chance to check it this morning either, Delegate Healy.
Okay, that's fine. We can proceed anyway. That's fine.
Thank you very
Sorry,
much.
Chair Holmes, I'm not seeing a crossfile for HB 1076.
Okay. All right, so let's go now to HB 1152.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
I have here Senate Bill 677. Is that the crossfile?
We'll check it out. We'll check it out.
Okay.
It's not the crossfile. It's a different bill.
Okay. My bad.
No, not necessarily. On this particular case, yeah. Oh, Delegate Boyce, I see you here. Thank you. Now let's go to HB 1152. This is Delegate Stein's bill, which he would not propose if he were a resident of Springfield, Ohio. Ben, if you could please tell us what this bill does. I see Delegate Shiliberti got the joke anyway.
Thanks, Chair Holmes. I have the screen up now. This is, as you mentioned, sponsored by Delegate Stein. The title is Residential Rental Property Pet Policy Disclosure. The bill generally concerns, as kind of stated there, the disclosure of a pet policy that a landlord needs to provide. At the bill hearing and in the testimony, there's notice about how there's been issues with people who are, believe or have an understanding when they're becoming tenants and they have a pet, but then either the landlord doesn't adhere to the policy or changes the policy. Regardless, some of the issues that I think were underlining the bill were tenants having to part with their pets or face breaching a lease. So that was part of what the bill is at. I think Delegate Allen raised their hand, Chair Holmes.
Are those all the amendments so far?
No, but I wasn't sure, Chair Holmes.
Delegate Allen, go ahead.
No, no, keep going, Ben. I'll wait till
Okay,
you're done
okay.
presenting the amendments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so as you can see here, there were a few amendments, but I'll also go through the bill here. So there's the application here of this notice provision, and as it says in C1, it's narrowing that so that it applies only to a landlord who owns or operates 5 or more individual dwelling units. There was some, and then this is the provision about how a landlord's providing a link to their pet policy. And then MMHA was kind of concerned about it not just being any advertisement as it is in sub paragraph 2 there on line 21. But they wanted it to be kind of more clear that it was coming from the landlord. Because a lot of times I think, data is getting scraped online, aggregated, put on websites that might not necessarily be from the landlord. So that was done based on the MMHA testimony, and is more of a clarifying change. Same with that paragraph 1 there. It's only if the property has a website, do they need to provide a link to the pet policy? And the pet policy is kind of enumerated here about the breed and weight restrictions, fees, number of pets, insurance requirements, or any other requirements. I did hear from the sponsor, Chair Holmes, that this is the kind of bringing it in conformity with the Senate bill, but I think there might have been more amendments to the Senate version last night. But
Well, we'll have to do what we can. We are in crunch time, as we all know. I make a motion to move the amendments. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the amendments. We are now in the discussion period of the amendments. Delegate Allen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, my question was at least partially answered, I think. I was curious if these amendments bring it into alignment with the Senate version. That was my main concern. I had heard that the Senate amended theirs last night or the night before. And I was wondering if we could ask Jennifer Bevan Dangle about the status of the Senate one.
Let me go to Delegate Naraki first, and then we'll go to the question relevant to the Senate version.
Understood. Thank you.
The differences, I'm sure all of us know that we get down to the wire with differences between Senate and House versions, which is why we have conference committees, because as we all know, the House is always right. But anyway, Delegate Naraki, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, why don't you go to Jennifer first? I have something that's not very serious, so I was just going to play around. I'll lower my head. I was messing around with something. So
Naughty.
I was going to ask you about my pet tarantula. I wasn't sure where this left me with that. If I'm still okay with that.
Your pet tarantula is safe as long as you don't take your pet tarantula to Springfield, Ohio. Jennifer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Subcommittee Chair, and thank you for the question. We really appreciate Ben's diligence on the bill. The amendments before you were a bit more of a scalpel approach. We do want to flag JPR took a slightly larger whack at the bill. They actually just struck lines 19 through 24, I believe, looking at the reprint amendments. I think the advocates are comfortable moving the bill in this form and then hoping to reconcile. We also know that it can be difficult to correct things later. So we sort of are at the will of the committee, whether you want to conform to what the Senate ended up doing or whether you want to continue with this approach. They're both addressing the realtor concerns. So they're both trying to address the same thing.
We can do that at a later point. We've got time. And again, once we get the Senate bill over here, once this bill goes over there, we can make those adjustments.
Yeah.
All right. We have a motion and a second on the amendments. All in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposition of the amendments? Let me scroll, ladies and gentlemen. I see no objections. I move the bill as amended.
Second.
And
Second.
there is a second. Any discussion on the bill as amended? Delegate Baker.
Yes, I can't pull my screen up, so was there any opposition on this bill? Unfavorables?
Ben?
Yeah, well, yes, thank you, Chair Holmes. Thank you, Delegate Baker. I remember going through the bill testimony. That was part of the basis for the
Amendments.
MMHA amendment.
Right.
I'm looking at the
Right.
realtors, they had unfavorable. They were saying that most of the properties by realtors are single-family homes to the extent that this creates additional complication in advertising, updating rental applications, and creating pet policies. There is a greater likelihood that some mom and pop owners will choose not to accept pets.
And I think part of that may have been addressed by that having the individual control by the landlord putting it up there. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much the you want to look at the MMHA testimony, but I think it was they were appreciative of the sponsor working with them. They sounded less opposed. Their position is informational. Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the bill as amended. Any additional discussion on HB 1076 as amended? Let me scroll. I see no hands up and I see no waving. Therefore, all in favor of HB 1076 as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No,
And
excuse me.
those unfavorable, I see Sheila Bertie.
No.
sorry.
It's not 1076, it's 1167.
Oh, no, wait a minute.
No, it's 10:52,
No, it's 11:52, I think, Chair Holmes.
11:52.
1167, hike.
Wait a minute.
I have 1167.
Yeah, but we're on 11:52, delegate.
Yeah, 1152.
We already voted on 1167
Yeah, we're
Oh,
on-
I'm sorry. My bad. Okay.
okay,
or
okay.
767. Yeah, sorry.
We know how much you love Montgomery County.
I used to.
Okay, you guys have got me totally confused here now. We are on 1152.
Bingo.
All right, we have addressed the amendments. Now we're on the bill as amended. All in favor of 1152 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you very much. That is favorable and that is unanimous. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to let you know it's no fair confusing the chair of the committee. We will go now, therefore, go to HB 1239. This is a fair housing bill. Ben, if you could discuss HB 1239, I certainly would appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair Holmes. I'm pulling it up here. Okay, 1 second. All right, HB 1239 is it's titled Fair Housing and Housing Discrimination, Regulations, Intent, and Discriminatory Effect. There's no fiscal impact. There's no amendments. At the bill hearing, the sponsor was stating that the bill does not change existing fair housing protections, but ensures that Maryland upholds and enforces federal fair housing standards at the state level. And with the concern about a federal rollback or non-enforcement. So the Maryland has anti-discrimination laws currently, which we'll get into here with the bill. So this is the state government article, Title 20, and then Subtitle 7 is the existing discrimination in housing subtitle. So this is what, in regard to Maryland's existing anti-discrimination laws that track federal fair housing, this is where that is, which has some, as you can see, existing law here about refusing to sell or rent or offer based on race, religion, sex, disability, marital status, and a number of other protected classes. But however, neither of these statutes that we're looking at now mention the disparate impact. And so disparate impact, one moment, there's the United States Supreme Court case, which is the sort of the case law that's in addition to the statutory requirements. And in that case, in that Supreme Court case, the basic holding was that a policy that applies generally to all tenants The case was Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs versus Inclusive Communities Project from 2015. So if a policy applies generally to all tenants, but has a disparate impact on persons with a protected demographic characteristic, that can constitute discrimination, subject to a test about that we can get into as well. But that's sort of the gist of it. And so let's see, the OAG and the Public Justice Center were noting that the previous Trump administration attempted to limit the use of disparate impact under the Fair Housing Act. And the testimony was also stating that Project 2025 aims to reshape federal agencies that undermine fair housing protections, concerns about funding cuts for HUD that will weaken the ability for HUD enforcement. So here is the provision about acting in a manner that has a discriminatory effect. And it mentions the same classes there. And then it's also says that, however, they have not violated the section because it's regardless of intent. You see there added in 705, which kind of speaks to the disparate impact theory. A person has not violated a prohibition in subsection A if the action was without discriminatory intent, justified, and the person could not have accomplished the legitimate business necessity by less discriminatory means. So, yeah.
And as I recall, Ben, there were very few, if any, amendments on this. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair Holmes. That's my understanding as well. MBIA withdrew their, I'm not sure if they were unfavorable or favorable with amendment, but yeah, that they withdrew their testimony.
All right. So there are no amendments on 1239. Is that correct, Ben?
That's right, Chair Holmes. There was other, if I may, one second. Yeah, CIA, I think, had testimony. One moment.
CIA?
Community Association Institute.
Okay. They were saying that federal law already outlines what the bill appears to be trying to do while covering intent, and adding this bill will only confuse and add conflicts. But I guess you could say that this is just a codification of that standard, the disparate impact theory, which again is a established case law through that Supreme Court opinion that was discussed.
Let me do this first, ladies and gentlemen. Let me get a motion favorable on HB 1239.
Move favorable.
I have a motion and a second on HB 1239. Now let's go to discussion. I'm going to take these as I see the hands. Delegate Naraki, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Ben, maybe you're the best to answer this question. I'm looking on page 4. I'm looking at lines 29 and 31. Just so everyone knows where I'm at, so we're all on the same page. Could you tell me like what some of those examples of those might be, what those legitimate business necessity actions would be, and kind of what those might be in that section? I'm just trying to understand what that means there.
Pull that up on your screen there, Ben, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
While you're discussing it.
1 second. Okay. Yeah. I think I can answer that question, Chair Holmes. I think there are some examples maybe in the testimony. Just from what I have in my notes here, a policy, for example, that imposes a limit on the number of people who can occupy an apartment to match the number of bedrooms may discriminate based on familial status. A policy prohibiting renting to tenants who have a felony conviction on their record, regardless of the offense or how long ago, may discriminate against Black tenants because of race bias in the criminal legal system. A policy that a tenant is subject to eviction if a crime occurred on the property may discriminate against women who are domestic violence victims. And then there's, I think, concerns about, so those are some examples.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a follow-up to that question?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just curious how, and this might be something that Delegate Allen might be interested in as well. We have a policy in Baltimore County because of Towson University and some other big universities that places restrictions on how many non-related persons can be in a rental property. Essentially, it was trying to get rid of some sort of de facto frat houses. We'll call it that way. What would a policy like this do for something like that? And maybe it does nothing. I don't know. I'm just kind of trying to wrap my head around what it does to policies like those.
I'm not sure about that specific hypothetical. I do think that's certainly probably not the intent of that. But
I don't think it was either. As I listened to the testimony, that was what you're discussing, Delegate Rocky, is certainly had been discussed, but I don't think it was the intent of this legislation.
I'm not saying that that's the intent of the sponsor to go after that sort of stuff. I'm just curious about sort of an unintended consequence.
Gotcha.
Could that somehow pose a problem, for those kinds of restrictions for, non-related persons and those kinds of properties there?
I see Delegate Boyce has probably a response to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Narki, I would argue no, because Baltimore City has it even stricter. It's no more than no more than 4 unrelated individuals in a housing per zoning. So I would say if zoning laws, housing laws are already in effect, and I'm sure they already meet some type of discriminatory or a constitutional muster. So I would say this doesn't apply.
Okay, thank you, Madam.
I think Delegate Healy may have an answer for you too, Delegate Rocky. Delegate Healy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I agree with what Delegate Boyce said, but also this bill is focused on the landlord, and the landlord is complying with what the local law is. So I don't think that this will affect the landlord at all in this case with regard to what the county zoning requires. They have to follow the local zoning law. So they can't be held accountable for not doing what they're supposed to.
Does that kind of take care of it, Delegate Rocky?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for that.
Sure. That's why we're here.
Move the bill, Mr. Chair.
There's a motion and a
Second.
second. Yeah, and this is on HB 1239. All in favor of HB 1239 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Let me scroll through. No hands and no waving. So everyone is in favor of HB 1239, and it is unanimous. Let's go to the final bill of the day, HB 1167, and this should be a favorite of yours, Delegate Sheila Bertie, since you are a fan of Montgomery County.
Yes. Heartbeats.
Ben, you have the floor.
okay, thank you, Charles. I'm pulling the amendment up right now. Oops, wrong screen. Sorry. Okay, so the title of the bill is Municipal Authority to Regulate Structures, Alterations. There's no state or local fiscal impact. There are amendments which were characterized by the Montgomery County Intergovernmental Relations Office as being narrowing a little bit, but the bill is the testimony was all favorable with the delegation amendments, unanimous for the delegations. The county executive supports the bill as well as MNC PPC. Generally, the bill modifies provisions that authorize a municipality or govern special taxing district within the Maryland-Washington Regional District in Montgomery County to impose additional or stricter building requirements. So, and then it provides, as you can see in the amendments there, the type of building, type of units, single unit duplexes, those with 4 or fewer dwelling units.
I move the amendments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the amendments. Any discussion on the amendments? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? I move favorable on the bill as amended.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on HB 1167 as amended?
Yes.
Celebrity.
Quickly, how are they defining structures? If you have something in the backyard that would be a shed, would they consider that a structure?
Hmm.
Good question.
I can share my screen again, Chair Holmes. and
Yeah.
That'll help.
Okay,
So a building requirement, as you can see in B here, under this section shall be imposed for protection of public health safety, and that it goes on to say that a building requirement may regulate only the construction, repair, or remodeling of residential buildings. And then these are sort of the parameters, the main one being 4 or fewer dwelling units. And then they provide some examples of what that might look like, as well as accessory structures. And then that's kind of like the general parameter. And then the types of building requirements are specified there. So
okey doke. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any additional questions on the bill as amended? Seeing none, all in favor of the bill as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Thank you very much. That is all favorable and unanimous. Ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate your time for the housing and real property. We will be meeting again tomorrow and perhaps maybe on Friday. Delegate Boyce.
I apologize, Mr. Chair, that I was not on time. I had another bum rush of a meeting. But did we move 716 and 767, or did we just discuss them?
Moved.
Moved. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, then. Have a good day, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned for another exciting version of Housing and Real Property tomorrow and perhaps Friday.
Can't wait.